Hi, welcome back to the kitchen TV. So you see, we're not in the kitchen here.
Not really.
We are a nice environment. We are in Calanque of Cassis.
For people that don't know where that is, it's the south of France, close to Marseille.
Yeah. So, and you know how you can enjoy time? You know, Andy?
Well, you can enjoy time if you actually have the time to visit places like this. But the question is, how do we have?
How do you gain time? How do you gain time? That's the idea. So basically, we'll learn you how you can save time by utilizing NeoLoad
And
and
Dynatrace.
Dynatrace.
Yeah.
That's the reason of the integration. Basically, the integration is able to test and then get to awesome places like this.
Exactly. And this is not sponsored by the tourism ministry of France.
It could be, by the way.
Yeah.
So, keep posted. We will go through 3 steps: how to put the plugin in NeoLoad, how to configure the user, what we required in Dynatrace.
Actually, nothing, because you automated everything. So you don't need to do anything. You just need to let the Dynatrace A.I do its magic while
You
the
need
load
an
comes
API
in.
token.
That's the only thing you really need, but that's easy to do. And we can even automate that too.
That's true. That's true. All right. So go step by step, and we will enjoy that. You will see. And then once you have utilized that, I welcome you to enjoy your time. So let's start with the basics configuration. So to start, as a starting point, obviously, if you want to do the integration between NeoLoad and Dynatrace, first, naturally, you will need NeoLoad. So if you want to have NeoLoad, first thing first, you have to go to neolis.com, and you will have through here you can have try NeoLoad if you don't have NeoLoad, and if you're already a customer, you just have to go to support and you'll be able to download the latest release of NeoLoad. So that's for installing NeoLoad on your laptop. Andy, what about Dynatrace?
Yeah, so Dynatrace is very similar. So we can go to dynatrace.com and you basically dynatrace.com. In case you are not yet a customer, you want to try it out. There's a big free trial button on the top right. Perfect. Click it, and then you just fill out your email. That's all it is, and then it walks you through the whole process of getting a SaaS trial. Now, if you want to run Dynatrace on premise, we also have the option to run Dynatrace as a managed offering. So we install, or you install Dynatrace on your own hardware. So that's up to you, but typically starting with a 15-day trial is great. Now, Henrik, once people have done this, they actually end up in the Dynatrace web UI. Let me just show you what it takes in order to set up Dynatrace. Once you're here, just follow the instructions. And the first thing is you need to deploy Dynatrace. So that's mandatory. Just follow the instructions to install the Dynatrace One agent on those machines or hosts or Kubernetes clusters where your application that you want to test later on is running. So you can see here we have the different OSs available. You just click on it and you follow the instructions. So like in this case, you download the agent, you can verify that you downloaded the legit thing, and then you install it, and that's it. And what happens afterwards, Dynatrace will automatically monitor all those hosts where you actually have installed the one agent. Now, Henrik, I'm just going to pick one of those, right? It seems you've installed it on AWS. So in this case, Dynatrace is monitoring the host, but not only the host, it's actually monitoring full stack. And there's a view that's called Smartscape. So Smartscape actually nicely shows you what Dynatrace does. Monitors the host you've installed, it gives us information about where this host actually runs, and is automatically monitoring every single process and also every single service, whether it's databases, your Java apps, your .NET apps, whatever it is, Dynatrace is automatically monitoring it. A key concept of Dynatrace as well is that we are also doing full end-to-end tracing, and also very important because eventually you end up with let's say a lot of different services and processes. We have a concept of tags, and I think, Henrik, this is very important for people to understand as well. Now in this case, I have my Tomcat. I just picked a random service here. In this case, this Tomcat has been detected automatically. Dynatrace has a lot of metadata about that Tomcat, also which process is running this particular Tomcat. Now there's an option in Dynatrace that's called automated tagging rules. So we can take information from the process, from the underlying host, from the JVM to automatically create a tag. So for instance, you could let Dynatrace create a tag that says this application belongs to group A, B, or C. Or you can also add manual tags if you want to, or you can also create these tags through the REST API. But let's assume I just do something like Andy's Tomcat, then I can create this tag, and from now on it's tagged. The reason why this is important, you will see later on, because this is the way NeoLoad talks with Dynatrace or the instances it tests. So what we discussed so far, install in the one agent, you understand the tagging concept, there's more information you can find online. Last thing, Henrik, that we need for the Dynatrace integration is a so-called API token, because the NeoLoad Dynatrace integration is heavily relying on APIs that enables automation. So if you click on settings, as you just saw me do, and if you are scrolling down to the integrations menu, then you'll find a section here that's called Dynatrace API. If you click on Dynatrace API, this is the place where you can generate your API tokens. So in order to generate a token that is needed for the NeoLoad integration, you click on Generate Token. I just call this NeoLoad test token, right? That's what we're using it for. The name really doesn't matter. What does matter is you give it the right privileges so that NeoLoad can actually, use all the features that the integration provides. So we definitely need the first three on top of here, where NeoLoad can pull and push data or pull data from the topology and event feeds. We also need the read and write configuration, because NeoLoad is automatically configuring the request attributes, the naming rules. There's a lot of cool things NeoLoad does out of the box. And very important, don't forget on the very bottom, it says import data and events from external sources. This actually allows NeoLoad to push data, push time series metrics and events from NeoLoad to Dynatrace, so that Dynatrace also gets to see data from NeoLoad. Henrik, is this correct, or am I missing anything?
Yeah, that's correct. So configuration is obviously required, because we're going to configure your tenant. Access to the topology, so we can grab the data in feed NeoLoad is also. And the last, like you mentioned, we want to send NeoLoad metrics to Dynatrace, so we need to be able to create those things. So that's the three things that is required. So in fact, it's in total 6 privileges that needs to be enabled.
Cool. Once we have this, we click on Generate. Generate means Dynatrace is not generating the token itself or the configuration. And if you expand it here, you actually see the token, which means I cannot click on Copy, which makes it now put into your clipboard, because we need it soon on the NeoLoad side for enabling that integration. Henrik, I think that's it from my side. To sum it up, what we've shown is, if you don't have NeoLoad yet, sign up for it and download it on the NeoLoad website, on the Neotis website. If you don't have Dynatrace, go to Dynatrace.com and get your trial, either SaaS or managed. Then make sure once you have Dynatrace to install the agent on those hosts or Kubernetes clusters, OpenShift clusters where you run your apps that you're testing. Next thing is become familiar with tagging, because that's an important concept, and you will see later on tags are used for NeoLoad to talk with the part of the Dynatrace monitored environment that is actually touched by the test. And last thing is you need to create the API token that we just showed you. And I think Henrik gets it from my side.
That's correct. So now let's have a look at what needs to be configured in NeoLoad and how you can utilize the plugin as side of a traditional load testing project. All right, let's see that part.
All right, so the first thing first, for the integration, obviously you have probably installed NeoLoad, so from our website through a trial, or if you're an existing customer, just download the product. Once installed, the Dynatrace integration requires an external plugin, so most of the official plugins are available through the GitHub page of the Neotis lab. So if you don't know where to find this, you just have to type Neotis dash labs in github.com, of course, and you will arrive to this main page of the different plugins. So there are several plugins, and the one that you're interested in today is the Dynatrace integration. So there are several releases of the Dynatrace integration. The latest one, which is having all the latest features all built with the events, the request naming rules, and so on. It's available in the develop branch. So if you select the develop branch, you will see this is the fresh new integration built by your guests, the chef of the kitchen TV. So you will see there is different, of course, the README file will give you more details, but I would recommend to first go to releases, and in the releases sections, there is one and one and only experimental new integration. So you will have to download the experimental one, and this means that you will have to integrate to download this file, which is a jar files, Dynatrace integration -404 beta version. So let's do it right now. So now I'm downloading it straight away. Once it's been downloaded, then you will need to add this jar files in the specific folder. So there's several ways to deploy the new fresh Dynatrace integration in NeoLoad. One is I want to add the plugin in the general installation of NeoLoad. So to do that, you will have to copy the jar files, go to the installation directory of NeoLoad. So in the case of Windows, you will have to go to program files if it's a 64 bytes installation. Select the NeoLoad 7.0 if it's a 7.0 installation. And within the NeoLoad different installation directory, you will find a folder called xlib, and you will have to basically paste this fresh new jar files in this directory. So that's means copying this means I am copying and adding the plugin in my NeoLoad installation. So which means every time you open NeoLoad, you will see the integration and you'll be able to take advantage. The other way around is, let's say I'm building a project and I want to have that project could run either in my laptop, or maybe tomorrow it's going to be my colleagues, or it could be Jenkins. So to make sure that the plugin is always there for anyone working on that project, it's more convenient to copy the project to the directory of the project. So let's open one of my projects that I have built. In fact, it's already there. You will see that, let me open this directly. So it's one of the projects I use for demonstrating the integration. And here in the front end directory, which is a project, which is a GitHub project, I have built a NeoLoad project. So here you can see it's a project called load template. And you see here, this is the structure of a NeoLoad project folder. You will have different folders, and the one that we're interested in is the lib folder. And here lib has different folders, one for the JavaScript, for the plugins, and the one where we can see here, there's also an xlib folder. So if I double click in that, you can see that I have my Dynatrace integration copy. So by doing this, it will make sure that anyone opening the project will have the integration, and you don't have any questions of, oh, did you deploy the integration in your NeoLoad installation or not? That's more convenient to once you start sharing your project between teams. All right, so that's how to deploy the plugin. Now, there are a few requirements related to using the plugin. So first, let me open the load template project that I just showed you. So here it's okay, so it's a 7, so he's going to migrate it. Fresh new release of NeoLoad. It will always, you have a new fresh release, migrate it with a new version. So now I have my, so to look at my Dynatrace plugin here, you will see that in the logical action panel here, you will see that there is a new folder called APM, And in the APM folder, you will see that there is a Dynatrace integration. You can see for those who've been using the official integration, there are more actions. So that's the new release, and there are new features related to those actions. So that means that the plugin is deployed. We are confident. The last thing that you need to do in the project settings of your is change and enable the Dynatrace integration. So if I go to the project settings, you will see that there's different tools, APM product, and one of them is Dynatrace. And here you can see I want to enable Dynatrace information, and with the 7.0 we've added now a menu, and I can say appmon, which is the old traditional tagging header names that we were adding for appmon. Now I can say Dynatrace, and by default we use x-dynatrace test. This of course is more than required, because by enabling this we will add to our traffic all the headers with the scenario name, the transaction name, and so on, and this will be basically captured and detected automatically by Dynatrace. So don't forget to enable this. I would recommend to leave x-dynatrace test. Why? Because the plugin is also configuring automatically the request attributes. So if you change the name, the plugin will create a rule that will never be applied because you have changed the name. All right. So now I have made those changes in my project settings, so I know that I'm going to send the proper tags to Dynatrace. The other thing that is also required is the usage of NeoLoad Web, because the integration is a bidirectional integration, so we are getting in data from Dynatrace, but we're also sending NeoLoad metrics to Dynatrace. This is possible with the help of NeoLoad Web. So it means that your NeoLoad installation needs to be connected to your NeoLoad account, NeoLoad Web account, and to do that I will very quickly show you that. All right, so let's see how to grab your token. So I'm connecting to my environment, to my NeoLoad Web environment. It could be a SaaS, it could be on-prem. There's different way to deploy it, and so here in my case it's a SaaS version. And I will show you how to proceed to connect the token NeoLoad Web with NeoLoad GUI with the NeoLoad Web. So here I'm clicking on my different accounts, but I'm looking at the SaaS one. Here the first thing I want to do is go to my profiles, and my profiles, you can see here I have you can generate a new access token. So like Andy said, it's better to create one token per integration, so you can easily disable one integration by destroying the token if you don't want to use that tool anymore. So if you click on generate, I say Dynatrace integration, okay, I say generate, and now I have fresh new, and the token that I'm interested in is this one, 2D whatever. I'm going to copy that, and then I will simply have to plug it to my NeoLoad. So how to do that in NeoLoad? Very simple. I go to edit, preferences, and in the general settings of NeoLoad, you have NeoLoad Web. So here first thing is you have a SaaS option. So in my case it's SaaS, or you can do on-prem, and here you will have to precise the URL of your NeoLoad Web installation. Then you copy paste your token, and once it's done you can test it, and you will see that I'm able to connect. So which means now I can all the tests I'm running in NeoLoad GUI will be sent over to NeoLoad Web, and the API will be able to grab the test details and send them over to Dynatrace. Okay, so now we have set up all the expected requirements. Now how to utilize it with a test. So the concept is very clear. The idea is you're going to run your user, 100 users, for example, for 100 virtual user load test, and we are going to add in parallel of those users an extra virtual user for the Dynatrace integration. So to do that, you will have obviously the need of creating a new fresh virtual user, so new user path in NeoLoad, and here it's already done. So the user, I have named it Dynatrace _ integration. If I expand this user, I have placed the different actions related to the Dynatrace integration. So each of those actions has a purpose, and I will explain them one by one. So init, just for those who are not familiar, init is the steps that are executed only once at the beginning of the test. So this is where we're going to place all the actions that will configure your Dynatrace tenant. Then action will be executed and iterated during the entire duration of the test. This is why we are placing here the Dynatrace monitoring actions to grab the monitoring details and also send the NeoLoad metrics to Dynatrace. Last is end, and this is executed only at the end of the test. So that's why we're sending here the test, the actions that will be done at the end, which is sending the event to Dynatrace. And if you are set up any anomaly detection rules, you can also place them at the end. So the first configuration, this is basically, if you've been using the Dynatrace integration, the official one, you have the responsibility of creating the request attributes rules in Dynatrace. Remember, we are adding automatically header details in our traffic when we enable the Dynatrace integration, and this header is required to be able to let Dynatrace understand that it's a sensitive traffic. So to let Dynatrace understand that, you will have to create your request attributes. So that's why here you don't have to do it anymore, because with the Dynatrace configuration, NeoLoad will reach out to Dynatrace and will create this rule automatically. That's why, like I said before, don't change the name x-Dynatrace test, because obviously the configuration action is based on this name. So if you change it, a wrong request attributes rule will be created in Dynatrace. So this configuration action will of course require several parameters. So the Dynatrace API key, so the one that has been generated with the help of Andy, your Dynatrace ID, the tags, and then of course if you're in a debugging mode, we have a trace mode to understand why there is a bug here with the internet situation. But here you don't need it in your case. Dynatrace ID, where do I grab this? So there are a few things. So if I open my Dynatrace environment, you can see here in the top URL here, this is the information related to my Dynatrace environment. And before we are handling your Dynatrace environment differently if it's a live environment, which is SaaS, or if it's a pure managed environment. There's a specific parameter for the Dynatrace managed environment. So the details you're gonna specify to NeoLoad is different if it's a SaaS or managed. In the case of a SaaS, you will have to specify the entire host name. So in my case, this is my environment, so I'm specifying everything live Dynatrace.com. If it's a host managed, you will have to specify the host, and you will see in the URL of your tenant, Dynatrace tenant in your managed environment, there is a host, couple of details, and at the end there's UID. So you copy everything into the UID, and you will put that in the Dynatrace integration. The last thing is the tag. So where we are sending tags while we are configuring the Dynatrace environment. Why? Because if you, I recommend to look at the webinar that we did with Andreas a few months ago. The idea is that the monitoring details that we're getting from the Dynatrace environment is based on tags. We explained that a few minutes ago. So what we want to do is leave NeoLoad auto-tagging the environment. So we're going to reach out to your architecture with a Smartscape, remember. We are going to select the main service through this tag, the one that you have, these parameter tags. And then we're going to look at if there are any dependencies. And if there are dependencies, we're going to auto-tag that. So NeoLoad will place the tag for you, which means you will get some monitoring details not only on your service but also on the dependency services as well. So that's for the configuration. The other action is the anomaly detection rule. So this is purely optional. This is made to create a rule in the Dynatrace A.I and open problem tickets automatically based on a rule that you have defined. So in my case, there is several ways to do it. I would recommend to use the JSON anomaly detection file. Basically, inside of your project, you will have a JSON file, and this file will specify the rule that you will want to apply on your Dynatrace tenant. So if I can show you very quickly in my project folder, here you can see that I have placed this JSON file, front-end anomaly detection rule. So I'm going to open it, and the way it's structured is very simple. It's basically there is a table, an array of rules, and this is the JSON object for the rule. So the first object is Dynatrace metric name. So in fact, if you're familiar with Dynatrace, you will have to specify the Dynatrace time series ID of your metric. Then you will specify the operator. So there's two operator compatible, above and less than. Then the value. So here it's going to be if the response times is above 100 milliseconds because the response times in Dynatrace is in milliseconds, I will open anomaly of the type performance. Okay, so this is the rule. So if you want to place another rule based on CPU, you will specify Dynatrace metric name, the time series ID of the CPU, operator above, for example, and value 80, so 80%. And you will open, for example, infrastructure problem or whatever, and you will precise that. So this is a way to give rules to Dynatrace to open problem tickets automatically. And this makes sense, especially if you're working in a dev or staging environment where Dynatrace didn't have the time to learn what is a baseline on your environment. So that's the anomaly. So if you create an anomaly detection rule, you will need to delete it at the end of the test to avoid opening problem tickets, which doesn't make sense outside of a load test. So that's why don't forget to place the equivalent of the set anomaly detection, which is delete. And delete will basically, you will only have the Dynatrace API key and ID to delete every rules that you have been created at the initial of your test. Dynatrace monitoring, similar parameters, API key, ID, tags, and that will basically allow NeoLoad to basically collect the monitoring data available in your Dynatrace tenant, grab it and send it to NeoLoad, and otherwise we also pass the NeoLoad metrics to Dynatrace during this process. Delay monitoring, I will heavily recommend to do that because there is a limitation. We are not able to send lots of API calls to Dynatrace. There is obviously a limitation. That makes sense. So make sure that you do run this this process every 30 seconds. So that's why you have to place a delay. If you don't want to place a delay, you can also place a pacing here. So with the configuration of the pacing, you can set that the folder here will be run during 30 seconds. So you will ensure that you won't overblast the usage of your API keys. Once you have configured your Dynatrace integration virtual user path, the second thing that you need to do, obviously, is to create a specific user for your Dynatrace integration. So one population with your user path called Dynatrace integration, only one user path. And then once you configure your tests, you will need to create, let's say in my case, this test called card load test, where I have my load plus in parallel of that, one extra population called the Dynatrace integration, where I will apply a constant load with one user during the entire duration of your test. So that's basically how you configure the design. Once you have done it, you can obviously utilize the project through a pure NeoLoad GUI execution file test, or you can also use the S code, or the YAML file description file as well is compatible. Trigger that with Jenkins. So all the automated way of running a test in NeoLoad is obviously compatible with this NeoLoad integration. Okay, so now we have done that. Let's see what type of metrics we are getting out of the integration.
So now we have launched the test. So the first thing at first, I have to go to NeoLoad Web. So that's the NeoLoad Web dashboard. So I can see that on my account at the moment as we speak. There is one of the tests that's been triggered through Jenkins called functional check. So if I want to have a look at it, I just have to click on the test itself, and I can see here the global statistics of a test. So the user load, the hit per second, throughputs, and so on and so forth. And by the way, while we are here, and you will see that later on in Dynatrace, all those metrics that are in this specific dashboards we call it the global statistics, which shows you the hit per second, throughput, transaction per second, requests, the errors, the user load. All those informations are the metrics that we are pushing to Dynatrace. So if you're looking at which metrics you're pushing, go to the dashboards and you will see those metrics here are the one that we expose to Dynatrace. So let's have a look at the test itself. So if I go to select dashboards, it brings me to a new fresh dashboard. So let's create a fresh new one. And we can give a name, by the way, here. Say I'm gonna if you want to for analysis purposes, called, let's say, kitchen TV. Here it is. And if I have a colleague of mine, let's say Andy is connected and he wants to see the same graphs, I can share it. So he will see the same graph that I'm currently doing. So now, like we explained, we have the Dynatrace integration user that comes along with the load. So that's the technical user that will make the magic under the scene. And aside of that, we have our user path, the one that generates the load. And if I want to look at any transactions or any response times, I just have to create the transaction, so that add item, for example, and drag and drop it into a folder. So this is the current build. But if I want to compare it with another build, so this is the cart project, I can easily filter that and say, here we have the build 82 running, but I can compare it with the build 81. So if I click on it, I can lively drag and drop it and lively compare my metrics. So this is for pure NeoLoad metrics. But in fact, the great thing is if NeoLoad grabs metrics from Dynatrace, there will be basically monitoring data. So those metrics will be available in the monitoring section here. I will have those metrics as well, which means if they are coming in NeoLoad directly and available, it means I can also do comparison. So if I click this total CPU, you see the total CPU of the tests. So of the build 81, because obviously it's the one selected, but I can go back to build 82 here and do the same thing. Grab one of the metrics that comes from Dynatrace, and I can send it over to NeoLoad, and then I will be able to compare things. Same thing that we did, so here it's quite similar, but I can do the same comparison approach on data that comes from an external source, which is, in our case, Dynatrace. So that's what you will have, how you can analyze and take advantage of metrics coming from Dynatrace. So a few things that we are collecting through the tags, the hosts that are coming from the tags, and the services. And from the services, you have two information. Either the global statistics or that the Dynatrace metrics coming from the service level, and also process. Process gives you how much CPU you are consuming on all those process groups. Because under the process group, you can have different nodes, different containers, different tomcats, or different whatever. And we will sum all the CPU, sum all the memory. So it's a pretty good KPI, especially if you do regressions, to see if you're consuming more or less CPU between two builds, or more or less nodes, containers between two builds. So, Andy, what do we have in Dynatrace?
First of all, I want to say this is pretty cool, especially with the comparison ability, that you can actually overlay multiple time frames, so multiple test time frames with each other. I think that's pretty cool. So in the Dynatrace side, if you go over to Dynatrace, there is you are also sending not only time series data but also events to the different services. So if I hopefully still have control, perfect. Let's actually start with the charting. So create custom charts. What we can do here is you can pick a custom metric or any metric, and as we can see, it shows up here under custom devices. So the transaction failures, the request successful, and all these are all the high-level metrics, Henrik, that you showed us earlier on the NeoLoad side. So, for instance, I could pick request count, and the test that we just ran earlier. Here are the NeoLoad metrics. So you can obviously, it's like my NeoLoad, like load indicator, whatever I want to do is. Here we go, and then I have my chart, and I can even pin it to the dashboard if I want to. Pin it to the dashboard. Henrik, is it okay if I put it into your CPT default?
Yes, no worries.
Awesome. You can also clean it up later on. But you just pick the metrics. You can pick one, you can pick multiple, and here we are. So now, if I click on them in edit mode right away, right? You can see there's a very, very powerful dashboarding option. The cool thing is we can now build dashboards in Dynatrace that show both NeoLoad metrics. I think you already pre-configured this one here, NL imported metrics, so it looks nicer. And on the side here, all the different Dynatrace metrics that we have, also the Smartscape information, the service health, and so on and so forth. Now, last thing I want to show, transactions and services, right? If we pick our services by tag, and I would assume
it's cards.
It's the cards, app.cards. So I basically say Dynatrace, show me those services that are tagged with cards. Click on it. So now this is where, again, why it's so important that we have the proper tagging in here, that, NeoLoad on additional tags on these entities. This is also where you're pulling back the data through our time series, but what's really nice here on the bottom, we got the annotations. This is also where you, from a NeoLoad perspective, are pushing event information to Dynatrace. So if I'm looking at the Dynatrace data and I wonder what the hell was going on at this particular time range because we saw all of a sudden traffic, then now I know. There was a load test running for, in this case, only 2 minutes. I know which test it was, and I also have the link back to your NeoLoad web dashboard. I think that's pretty fantastic.
Well, what about how can you analyze the traffic that comes in Dynatrace? Because our traffic is sent over Dynatrace. I'm pretty sure that people, most of our performance engineer wants just to dig in and understand what's happened in the application itself.
I believe you're completely right? Because metrics only get you so far. So there's multiple options here. If we know against which service we are testing, I could go in here and click on few requests and then I could analyze it. My preferred way is actually through Diagnostic Tools. So we are doing performance diagnostics. So I click on Diagnostic Tools. I click on whatever I want to do. If I want to do an exception analysis, I can start here. If I want to do CPU analysis, I can start here. If I want to find any database hotspots. If we're testing web applications, I would typically start with top web requests. So now what I see here is kind of my load over the last 2 hours. Now remember, if you have Dynatrace installed across your larger infrastructure, then you would see all of the data here.
It's the uppercase, NeoLoad.
It's the uppercase.
Scenario name.
So here we go, right? I could specify a particular scenario name if I want to, or if I want to have all the scenarios, then I get this. So it filters it down, and basically what I see now, first of all, in line view of the last 2 hours, how much traffic came in, also split by add to cards, get health. So these are the 2 endpoints that you were testing. Now the nice thing is I can focus on an individual one, and I can either create a chart for it, but more important, and that's the data what we have, I can say, give me a method hotspot analysis. So I can directly click on, for instance, method hotspots or response time hotspots. This actually goes far beyond just methods. It actually analyzes not only method problems, so code level problems on method level, but also database interactions with other services. So it immediately points out to me that even though the service is not that slow, but the hotspot it found, it was code execution, 3.22 milliseconds. It was pure code execution, but we also break it up into other things. And it also shows me whether there's any issues with database access. What type of reads happen in this case in the MongoDB items collection, how much time is spent there, how many invocations are done, and then I can drill in deeper if I want to really, analyze how I can optimize these database statements. So this is one thing, Henrik. The other thing that people can do is, if I just do this again, if I go to Diagnostic Tools and if I go to Top Web Requests, if you have multiple tests, then not only can you do analyzing a particular test, but what you can also do is you can click on, let's say, one of the test scenarios, and you can then click on comparison, right? So you can say, I want to compare this particular time frame with a test that ran either the day before, or you typically would choose then a custom time frame, and then you would pick and choose the time when the test ran, maybe yesterday, the day before, or in the morning.
You can put Monday. Monday will be fine.
Huh?
Monday will be fine.
Monday? Yeah. Let's see here, Monday. Exactly, and then maybe we'll not zoom in, but zoom out a little bit. Let's see where you had your tests on Monday.
I don't remember. Oh, never mind.
No, let's do it. Whether it's be maybe go to some tests here. Right, we can do it. And then we had some tests here. And we can then just say, well, compare these two timeframes. And now Dynatrace is actually crunching through all the data of these two test timeframes. And then it tells me, what was the difference? What's the difference in database execution? What's the difference in method time execution? What's the difference in the way you're accessing an external service? Or where is the issue? And I think this is pretty cool. It also shows you whether there are new calls coming in. Hey, there's a new database all of a sudden that wasn't there before, new queries. So this is what it can do, and much more. Now, if you want to learn more about Dynatrace diagnostics and how you can go deeper, there's a lot of material out there online on our Dynatrace University, as well as on the YouTube channel.
So anomaly detections is a pretty powerful feature as well, related to the integrations. From the moment you have defined a rule, you can Dynatrace will throw problems. So if you have no problems, let's say the last 30 days, I'm pretty sure I'm going to find some problems. I can see that I have a couple of different problems that have been raised by Dynatrace, but one of them should be a NeoLoad, by the way. So scrolling down to get here, so here I have an example here that a problem has been recognized. It's a NeoLoad problem. Based on one of the thresholds defined in the project. So problems are quite also powerful in a sense where if you have specific SLAs or requirements on the behavior of your service, you can define them in NeoLoad, and those rules will be applied on your service. Those has been tagged, of course. And from a problem perspective, it will be traced, first of all. So you will track the problems in Dynatrace, so that's quite a good practice to compare things and figure out that you have a problem from a specific test perspective. But from a problem as well, once it's there, you can easily filter things and use all the diagnosis tools that Andy just explained a few minutes ago. So use the problems, anomaly detections, custom action is quite powerful. It's not required, of course, but if you know how your service should behave under your testing environment, having a rule configure will be very helpful to proceed to analyze very quickly your potential bottlenecks.
I think that's it. There's definitely more to learn, obviously, but there's other material. But I think the idea of this was to show you how to get started, how to set up the integration, and some core use cases. And if you want to learn more, there's more out there.
Oh, by the way, I think I launched a test a few minutes ago.
You launched a test?
Yeah, don't worry.
What do you mean that don't worry?
University education.
Okay, so you think that NeoLoad and Dynatrace is just taking care of it?
Yeah, we can always do.
Yeah, and we can keep drinking the beer?
Yeah. Oh, by the way.
nothing better than enjoying
It's not a beer.
Well, you don't have a beer, but I have a beer.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Keep testing and keep monitoring with Dynatrace so you have more time to enjoy drinks with your friends. Salute.